This is a matter of deen. This ilm is a matter of deen. You be careful who you take your deen from.
Contrary to the main hadith that we have in front of us, the hadith of al-Bukhari Muslim, with the well-known and authentic wording. With regard to the companion of the hadith, then obviously the companion of the hadith is the famous companion Talhah bin Ubaydullah radiallahu anhu. And just to mention something very brief with regard to his biography, because obviously being one of the 10 promised paradise, a very famous companion, and his biography would actually be extremely long. So just to mention some brief points extracted from the biography brought for him by Imam al-Dhahabi in Siyar al-Nubala. That's the famous book of Imam al-Dhahabi, Siyar al-Nubala, the 26 volume book. For the first 3 volumes he devotes to the companions. And the first companion he begins, number 1, is az-Zubayr ibn al-Awwam radiallahu anhu. And the second one he mentions is Talha. So just to mention some points from what he brings, he says Talha, that he was Talha ibn Ubaydullah ibn Uthman ibn Amr at-Taymi. Now that's referring to Taym, Banu Taym of the Quraysh. Banu Taym are a number of tribes, there are a number of different tribes called Banu Taym, and this one is the Taym of Quraysh. It's from the Quraysh. As he makes clear in the rest of his biography, the rest of his lineage, that he was Talha, the son of Ubaydullah, the son of Uthman, the son of Amr, the son of Ka'ab, the son of Sa'ad, the son of Taym, where they take that name from. The son of Taym, the son of Murrah, the son of Ka'ab, the son of Lu'ay, the son of Ghalib, to the rest of the well-known obviously. By here, his lineage is already joined up with that of Allah's Messenger, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he said, after mentioning some more forefathers, al-Qurashi, from Quraysh, at-Taymi, al-Makki, from Mecca of course, Abu Muhammad, his kunya was Abu Muhammad, one of the 10 who were witnessed in favour of that they were people of paradise. And he said, he narrates a number of ahadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said in the Musnad of Baqi ibn Makhlad, with the repetitions, he has 38 hadith. And this is a point that the scholars mention, that this is a Musnad, probably the largest Musnad that used to exist, from Baqi ibn Makhlad in Spain, but it's one that's been lost. So scholars, they quote from it, the earlier scholars haven't quoted from it, and now the actual Musnad is, these days, it's lost. So because they say it's the largest Musnad it contains probably all the hadith that can be gathered for each companion, so they'll count the hadith for a companion, how many reports in that Musnad, and that's how many hadith they attribute to that companion. So from that Musnad they attribute to Talha 38 hadith. He said he has 2 hadith which are agreed upon, and al-Bukhari alone reports 2 hadith, and Muslim reports 3. 2 hadith, both in al-Bukhari and Muslim, 2 only in al-Bukhari, and 3 in Muslim. He mentions a list of those who narrated from him. Let me just mention some of them. He said his sons, from those who narrated from him were his sons, Yahya, and Musa, and Isa. And he mentions a list of others as well. As you can see, he used to name his sons after prophets, Yahya and Musa and Isa. And there's a narration, wallahu alam, with regard to az-Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, that he mentioned this to Talha, that Talha, you name all your sons after prophets. And az-Zubayr was known as naming his sons after martyrs, those Muslim fighters who had died fighting for Islam. So az-Zubayr would call his children after the names of martyrs. So the narration mentioned they had a discussion in this regard. So az-Zubayr overcame Talha with this discussion and said, you name your children after prophets, but there's no chance that they can become prophets. But I name my children after martyrs, hoping that they will become martyrs. Wallahu a'lam. So as we saw anyway, the point that those who narrated from him included his sons Yahya and Musa and Isa. He mentions that Ibn Manda said regarding him, he was a man who was brownish in complexion, having plentiful hair. He was not very squat and short, nor was he extremely lanky, in between. He had a handsome face, and when he walked quickly, and he had not used to dye his hair. He likewise brings a report from his son, from Musa ibn Talha, that he said that he was whitish, inclining towards redness, square-bodied, being slightly close to being short, in medium but slightly on the shortish side, slightly, having a large chest and having broad shoulders and having large feet. When he used to turn, he would turn his whole body around. Imam al-Dhahabi said, I say he was one of those who were first and foremost in entering into Islam, and he suffered harm for Allah's sake. And elsewhere they mention him as being one of those whom Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu called. He entered Islam through the call of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Allahu anhu. So Imam al-Dhahabi here, though, he said he was one of those who suffered harm for Allah's cause, and then he performed hijrah. And it happened that he missed the event of Badr. He missed the Battle of Badr because he was performing trade in Sham, and he felt pain at having missed it. So Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam gave him a share of booty from that. Gave him a due share as one who was present. Others mention that his hand was paralyzed. His hand became paralyzed from the wounds which he suffered defending Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam on the day of Uhud. And likewise he said, he brings a hadith of Jabir radiallahu anhu, who said, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, whoever wishes to look at a martyr walking upon his 2 feet, then let him look at Talhah bin Ubaydullah. Hadith reported by Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah, declared Sahih by Shaykh al-adani, after what he had done at the Battle of Uhud in defense of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Likewise, At-Tirmidhi also reports that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said on the day of Uhud, أوجب Talha. Talha has made it binding for himself, meaning made paradise binding, certain for himself. Hadith declared Hasan by Shaykh al-Albani. Also, a narration he brings from Qais that he said, I saw the hand of Talha which he used to defend the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam on the day of Uhud, and it was paralyzed. He was paralyzed from defense of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, holding his hand to deflect all the arrows that were firing at the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam on the crucial point of the battle. Likewise he brings a hadith reported by Imam al-Nasa'i from Jabir also, who said when it was the day of Uhud and the people fled, and Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was in one place with 10 men only. From them was Talha. So then the people of Shirk reached them. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, who will deal with the people, I mean the enemy? So Talha said, I will. So he said, stay as you are. Kama anta, stay as you are. So another man said, I will. So he said, anta, you, do so. So he fought until he was killed. Then the people of Shirk were still attacking. So he said, who will deal with them? So Talha said, I will. So he said, remain as you are. And a man from the Ansar said, I will deal with them. So he said, you. So he fought until he was killed. So that carried on happening until no one remained with the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam except Talha. So he said, who will deal with the people? So Talha said, I will. So Talha fought until his fingers had been cut off. And then Allah repelled the people of Shirk. Hadith reported by An-Nasa'i declared Hasan by Shaykh al-Albani. Likewise, he brings a narration from Imam al-Bukhari that no one remained along with Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam at that time fighting along with Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, except for Talha and Sa'ad. You know, that crucial point in the battle when they were hit by the enemy and many of them fled out of shot. But no one remained except for Talha and Sa'ad radiyallahu anhum. You see, likewise brings a narration from Musa and Isa, the two sons of Talha, who narrate from their father, that the companions of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that they said when a Bedouin came, and a Bedouin man came asking about who is man qada nahbahu, who is a person who has already done his duty, already finished his term, but he's still alive. He said, and they, the companions, had not used to be bold enough to ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam questions, how to respect and awe for him. So the Bedouin man came and he asked. So he turned away from him. Then he asked again, so he turned away. And then meaning Talha, came in from the door of the mosque. So when Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw him, he said, where is the questioner about the one who has already completed his term, already done his duty, completed his term? So the Bedouin said, it is me. So he said that he is from those mimman qada nahbahu, who have already done their duty, completed their term and the like. The hadith reported by Tirmidhi and declared Hasan Sahih, good, authentic by Shaykh al-Adani. As for the death, as we said, his biography would be prolonged. As for the death of Talha radiallahu anhu, he died in the year 36. He was killed. He fought on the day of the camel, and he mentioned that Talha was one of the first who was killed. That's the wording here anyway. He mentions the day of the camel. They said that Talha was one of the first ones killed, and likewise as Zubair, he was departing to join his sons, but he was also killed. And they mention that Marwan ibn al-Hakam, that he fired an arrow at Talha on that day, and it hit him on his knee, and he continued bleeding until he died. And some of the reports they mention, and Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar mentions, that they agree that the one who killed Talha was Marwan ibn al-Hakam. After a grudge which he had, he felt that Talha had not done enough to defend Uthman radiallahu anhu when he was attacked, so he wanted to get revenge. So he saw Talha as being a target for that, so he fired an arrow at him, and that resulted in his wound that he bled from and died radiallahu anhu. He said at the end of his biography, again mentioned that one who killed him was Talha, the one who killed Talha was Marwan ibn al-Hakam. And they say, and Talha had a number of prominent children, or fine and excellent children. From him was Muhammad as-Sajjad, the son of Talha, who was a youth, and he was a fine good person and a worshipper, one who was obedient to Allah. He was born in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he also was killed on the day of the camel, along with his father, Talha. So Ali felt grief for him, and said he was overcome by his obedience and goodness towards his father. And he went to the battle along with his father, and that led to him being killed.